like your dress.
Thank you.
Super bright and happy.
Yep. When I have to
They have these,
to them and say, are we going after this grant? Oh, we'll look into it.
I love this.
Yeah. What are we paying you for?
Yeah.
You did that last week.
Lift the lever up and stand up.
All right. If everybody's ready, we're going to call to order the May 11th, 2023 Tourist Development Council meeting. Can everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is Amanda still over there? Who's calling the roll? Who's calling the roll today?
I think
I can't see on the other side of the pole.
Nick's gonna do it.
Nick.
Here.
Here. Here.
Morning. Here.
Here.
Thank you. Now moving to approval of the April 13th meeting minutes. Do we have an approval on that?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Holly Smith, Jay Johnson. Those are approved. Public to be heard. Is there anybody out there that would like to speak today? I got a hand up. Come on up to the podium, please. And if you could state your name.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Wilson, the Marketing and PR Director at Edison and Ford Winter Estates. We're very excited to share some new things with you. We've expanded our wildflower garden. We're constantly adding additional trees to the property, and we've replaced some that we lost from the hurricane. So right now, our property is really looking great. And we opened a new exhibit in the museum. We partnered with the Connie Mack family, and so we have a 5-year loan of numerous different artifacts from the Connie Mack family. So that's on display now, and we invited the family here to enjoy the opening, and that was a big success. We're also working with the Vintage Baseball Association to bring their national convention here next spring. So pretty sure that's going to take place. We're looking forward to that. And also, I just want to thank the TDC for the support that they've given us over the years. It really helps us a lot. Currently, our visitation is down 30%. So we're going to need that support all the more going forward. So we're hopeful that we continue this great. I hope everyone will come out and see the site, see what's come in the museum, and see what's new. And we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Yes, sir.
Long, quiet walk to the podium there.
Matt Johnson, the Executive Director of the IMAG History and Science Center.
It's not on, Matt. It's not on. I don't know.
Tap. There you
There
go.
you go.
Is it on now? Okay. Matt Johnson, the Executive Director of the IMAG History and Science Center. Pleased to come and report that we've had a wonderful spring. We just wrapped up our largest March and April in the history of our organization. Coming out of the hurricane, obviously, none of us knew what spring was going to look like, but obviously families looking for things to do with beach closures and other issues going on. They were looking for places to go, and being a great family destination, we saw a huge influx. And I will say that it wasn't all just Lee County local families. We had large groups coming up from Collier County, coming down from Charlotte County, that were obviously visiting places where there were more hotels available, looking for things to do. We had a rainy Wednesday in April that was actually our largest day in history. And so we're very pleased with what we've been doing, but also wanted to come and thank you for your ongoing support of the marketing. And as you just heard, it's an important part of our budgeting process to be able to produce quality marketing to let people know that we're open and we're here, and it obviously works because you get a rainy day and you get an opportunity, and the people come flooding in. So we appreciate the ongoing support from the TDC with the arts and attraction marketing. It's one of the few opportunities to find funds for local marketing, for improving our social media and doing those sort of marketing programs. So we appreciate that, and definitely support the opportunity for policy change that would allow for additional marketing in that. So thank you again for all your ongoing support, and we look forward to another great year as the area continues to recover. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Lydia, yeah, come on up. While she's coming up, just I always like to point this out. We've had two speakers, both from places that benefit from rainy days. As a guy that's out there on the coast trying to have people have fun, and they come in with their families, you get a rainy day, and you're like, what do I do with these people? Those are the kind of places that really help us out. I guess we're a little more well-rounded with rainy day spots. So thank you very much. Lydia.
Hey, they like us on sunshine too.
They do.
Sunshiny days too. My name is Lydia Black. I have the pleasure of not serving the nonprofit sector in the arts community and being here as an active and engaged citizen who truly cares about arts and culture. I just wanted to say that we are grateful for the funding. Over a decade ago, we worked with the TDC and a special committee to continue to advance arts and attraction funding on behalf of the arts and cultural community, recognizing that they're not just about entertainment, but they're economic drivers. They're opportunities for oh my gosh, I feel like it's a blast from the past, all the people I got to work with. Good to see you. But it's an opportunity for us to acknowledge and recognize that arts and culture support health and wellness. They support rising the next generation of leaders, our young people that are engaged in the arts. They have a great return on investment. And you folks have been so kind and generous to recognize this as part of strategic goals on behalf of the TDC. And so I wanted to come today just as a citizen, not responsible for any organization, to say thank you and to encourage you to continue to think about ways or continue to support the staff's recommendation for increased funding for marketing for arts and cultural organizations. For the fiscal year 22-23, this is the group of organizations that receive funding. These organizations represent entertainment, theater. They represent the organizations that are doing summer camp and after-school activities. These are organizations like the IMAG and the Davis Center that opened up their doors post-hurricane to provide resources, food distribution, respite, solace, mental health initiatives post-hurricane. We have places like Florida Rep that are instrumental to our downtown redevelopment community, folks out in Sanibel Crow, folks who really do, it's a wide berth of organizations. And I think that this is one of the grant opportunities that these organizations have that affect multiple areas by bringing in tourists and elevating the publicity that we have here. I just think it's an enormous success. So I want to say thank you so much to staff for continuing to encourage increased funding for arts and cultural initiatives, and just to say thank you for your continued support. Miss seeing you guys on a regular basis.
Thanks. And for those of you that have been longtime residents here, Lydia was at the Alliance of the Arts, and the legacy she leaves, like the way the property looks now versus the way it looked when she started there. I mean, a tremendous job. Thank you very much for that. I drive by it every day on McGregor and appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay, moving on to the report of the Executive Director. Municipalities to be heard. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Municipalities to be heard.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Sharon Woodbury, the Economic and Business Development Officer for the City of Cape Coral, and I just wanted to share some exciting projects we've got in the pipeline and some of the events that we've got going on in the next month or so, and some of our past events that were successful. So I just wanted to touch on a new project that we've got going on. It's a multifamily development on a 20-acre site, but pretty significant in scale with 444 units, amenities included. So high-end apartments, that's what we're seeing a lot of in terms of construction in the city of Cape Coral. It's certainly contributing to our economy and a lot of the construction activity that we see going on. Achieva Bank is opening up a new branch in the northwest portion of the city of Cape Coral, and Victory Park. This is a project we are very excited to see underway. It's a 140-acre master planned development. So we'll see medical, retail, multifamily, residential, veteran services, and a hotel. So definitely interested in that hotel component. It's something that we are most certainly in need of and looking to have additional hotels coming to the city of Cape Coral. So this is something that you'll see more about coming in the future. And City Mattress is opening up a location. So this particular area on Pine Island, this is where we've started to see a lot of national names recognized. And so City Mattress will be joining First Watch, Crumble Cookie, Firehouse Subs. It's just something a lot of our residents are excited to see occurring. And I wanted to talk to you about a new program that our city manager tasked the Economic Development Office with, and that was to find a way for us to provide some more support and assistance to our small businesses in our community reinvestment area, which largely our South Cape Central business community is located in. So we just recently had an announcement of Breaking Barriers to Business. We'll be providing assistance grants up to $50,000. And the goal of this program is to provide funding and helping our businesses with some of the additional costs that they find when they're going through permitting, land development code. There's some upgrades and improvements that they weren't prepared to make. And sometimes it can make or break a project. So we're really excited to see that come online. We're expecting that it will roll out in mid-June, and so we're really wanting to help our small businesses and are expecting great success from this. And I wanted to talk about some of the events that we had in April that were wonderful with cleanup. And before I go into this, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the first multifamily affordable housing project that the city had in Cape Coral. It's geared towards workforce housing, and we're expecting to see, let's see, how many units are we talking about here? 96 units, and we just had a groundbreaking for that in March, and $35 million project. We had the Lee County Housing Authority participate in that, and some of the developers in the group that are responsible for that project are Revital Development Group and Birdsong Housing. So back to events. We had our Cape Coral cleanup, and that was a citywide event that was actually aired on the Weather Channel and MSNBC. We had 1,000 residents participate in this event, and our goal was to set a record for the number of participants in a cleanup. So I think we achieved that because there are no records. So we're kind of setting the stage, and we're hoping that we'll see greater participation and our residents increase. But it was really something that we needed after the hurricane. I'm sure you all see and have seen there's a lot of debris and different things that are, on our pathways and our streetways, and we really take pride in Cape Coral, and so this was a great event. We also had the Cultural Park ribbon cutting ceremony. So that's one of our neighborhood parks that was one of 7 parks that we had at our Go Bond. And to continue that, we had a wonderful culture fest, and we were able to see arts, culture, music from a number of different countries across the world. So we had great turnout for that. And coming up, we've got the Brewfest at Cultural Park. This is a fundraiser for our Cape Coral Museum of History. That will be May 20th. And the Sun Trail ribbon cutting, that is about a 6.5-mile, 12-foot wide path that will be connecting to our statewide trail. So we're really excited to see that happening. And we'll have a ribbon cutting for that on May 12th. And on May 31st, our Hurricane Preparedness Expo. So we really want to get out there. We'll have organizations, members of the city government there to provide information on how our residents can prepare for the hurricane, and we'll also be providing giveaways for a 72-hour hurricane preparedness kit. And wanted to give you an update on Cape Coral Quest. Thank you to Tourist Development Council for your assistance in funding with this. So right now we've got over or close to 2,800 people signed up. We've had 3,800 locations checked and 34 Sunsplash season passes awarded. We also have 74 people who were added to our Westin Stay contest. So we've had great participation from our corporate presence there, and we're really excited, and I think our residents are too. So just wanted to thank you for your support and funding with that, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other municipalities to be heard? Okay, seeing none, now moving on to the report of the Executive Director, Tamara Pygott.
Good morning and happy National Travel and Tourism Week. This is the 40th year celebrating National Travel and Tourism Week, and interestingly, the 40th year also coincides with the 40th year of the airport. So if you didn't see, we had some special characters at the airport celebrating with the passengers as they arrived yesterday. So if you check your social media and see who was there, a little bit of fun. And we always enjoy celebrating the power of tourism, not only in our community, but throughout the country. Bed tax collections for the month of March came in at $5.7 million. This is down almost 48% compared to last March. And for the year to date, that puts us at $22.2 million, down 44% compared to this same point last fiscal year. The STAR report, occupancy down at 80%. ADR 246.51 and RevPAR 197.69 for the month of March. Of course, all the metrics you're going to see are down, no surprise. Same is true with the vacation rentals. The key data report shows occupancy at 44%, ADR at 267, and RevPAR at 116. Passenger count at the airport, just under 1.2 million, down 23%. And then for the calendar year to date, a total of 3 million or almost 3.1 million, down 17% over 2022 for the first quarter. I have a couple of things I want to share with you. One is to introduce you to our new research intern. Her name is Andrea Orsini, and she is going to be assisting Roberta with some special projects and data analytics. We're super excited to have another data analyst here on the team. She's a junior at FGCU, majoring in business administration and marketing. She is also originally from Venezuela. She moved to Fort Myers to complete high school at the First Baptist Academy in Naples. So please welcome Andrea. And now I would like to invite Joseph St. Germain from Down St. Germain up to give us our January-March quarterly report. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Joseph St. Germain. I'm the president of Downs and St. Germain Research. We are going to give a broad overview of January through March, and then also do a little bit of a deeper dive on some data comparing inland versus coastal properties, a little bit different than you may be seeing. This isn't going to go through everything in the report. The full report usually kicks in around 150 slides. That would take the whole meeting. So we are going to do the broad overview and then hopefully leave some time for questions. Now, before I get into the data, one of the things in telling the full picture of January through March, normally your busy season, it's still a busy season, but normally a more busy season, largely filled with a lot of leisure visitors, people coming for vacation. One of the things that we noticed this time, there's just more purposeful visiting, meaning I'm coming to see mom and dad. I'm coming to a sporting event like spring training, or I'm coming for this meeting or what have you, and less of that general leisure, which you'll kind of see throughout the report. But let's start with the big numbers. it's never fun to see the negative slides, but, the down slides. But visitation was down about 35% year over year. People were staying a little bit longer, so the visitor days was only down 29%. Room nights down, all these numbers are largely around the same figure, but, around room nights, direct spending, total economic impact down around 31%. As we look, one of the things we noticed when I mentioned like purposeful visiting, people visiting mom and dad, things of that nature, year over year, people staying in their second homes or visiting friends and relatives and staying with them, that number didn't really move. It was largely the same. You had fewer day trippers, because, the biggest day trip generally be like someone locally coming down to one of your beaches. There was less of that. And then a lot of less people staying in hotels, motel, your paid accommodations, because one, either those units aren't available or things of that nature. But you didn't really slip that much in the non-paid. So that's why you see this direct spend be a little bit higher than normally when you compare TDT to direct spend, those two numbers are really close, how much moves up and down. It's less because those people staying in non-paid kind of stayed flat year over year. So the example there is if you visit your mom and dad every February, most of them still came back this February. They just stayed with mom and dad as opposed to a hotel, motel, resort. Before I get into the visitor tracking, I want to go into the lodging statistics. You just saw key data and you saw STAR, and then we also do our own occupancy study. We also look at DBPR. So overall, occupancy was down 20%, ADR down about 18%, resulting in a RevPAR being down about 35% year over year. Even when we make comparisons to 2019, these numbers are still down a little bit. It's just not as dramatic compared to what you saw in 2022, which was a wonderful year, frankly. So these numbers look down because you're not only having a hurricane to deal with, but coming off such a great year. Again, we're going to look a deeper dive into some of the inland versus coastal comparisons. So up top, what you see here is October through December, comparing the previous fiscal year to this fiscal year, or this year, room nights, average occupancy, ADR. As you look at all these numbers, the biggest takeaway as I look at January through March, available units inland. Inland is very close to back to what it was in terms of availability in units. Occupancy was down a little bit, but rate was up and things of that nature. So as you've recovered January through March, inland is close to what it used to be, especially with units. As you look at on the right side, especially the available units, that's where we see our biggest decreases is in coastal. I mean, available units, we still have, we're down almost 60% in terms of available units on the coast. And the issue with that, those are also more that your high ADR units and that kind of thing. So ultimately, we want to look at this overall breakdown comparing inland coastal just to kind of show you what recovery is like. And inland, like I said, it's close to what it was pre-hurricane. Coastal is definitely less so, and that recovery takes some time. Tamara?
And just to add a little bit to this, I'm sure some people are like, what's not back online inland? We have 2 properties owned by the same company under a transition, so they're not open. That's your 4%. In terms of the difference between inland and coastal, we are using the same classification STAR uses these 2 tracks, which I want to be fair, isn't perfectly inland and perfectly coastal. So therefore, larger if we were truly going, are you on the coast or are you,
Yeah.
It's kind of 2 tracks done. We've been using those same tracks previous leadership.
And this, just to give everyone, this is the map of how we define inland versus coastal.
Go.
So if we look at the reopen rates, inland, 94% open. And this includes some vacation rentals. Vacation rentals in general, we've seen it taking longer to get back online. And then your open rates on the coast is only at 43%. And this is kind of how it's defined via STAR and everything that Tamara mentioned. So I just wanted to give it a visual. And I know you had a question.
I did have a question, and that it goes back to STAR. Are these just the reporting STAR properties, or are these? Okay, that's great.
Yeah, to this point, this is a.
And you might want to explain to the audience.
Yes, that's a good question. So that's a good point. So all this data for this comes from STAR, key data, our occupancy study where we reach out to folks, and then we also look at DBPR, licensure, and that kind of thing as we look at. So it's kind of integrating all of those data points. And to Tamara's point, we're defining them the same as much as we can, because it's kind of like when you're taking two interlocking puzzles and it doesn't always work, but you get as close as you can to give a broad overview of how it looks.
And you know, the reason we've always had a research company do an occupancy study for us is because we want to look at that broader picture, right? We don't just want to look at hotels. We know that we have other types of units here in the destination. So appreciate the map. I think that helps answer some of the questions I suspect they might have had.
And on top of all that, I mean, for the, like, you know, this to me as a data person, I love this. This is everything that I need, but some people are visual learners as well. So like this is another way as we look at available units. If you compare October through December, even inland, we still had some, you know, drop here, but as you get back to January through March, inland's very close, but this is the biggest disparity here on the coast, available units year over year, and that's where we kind of see a lot of these, you know, occupancy down, RevPAR down, ADR down, but it's largely because not only it's coastal, but those are the ones that have those higher ADRs and things of that nature. So this is just a visual way to try to kind of help understand that relationship.
In pre-Ian, what are the numbers about available rooms with coastal versus inland? You know, the amount available. Is it comparable? How does that work as far as total numbers?
Well, I mean, that's what every quarter as part of the large report, we kind of tell you how many room units are available overall. So we had this data pre-Ian, so we just compared it to post-Ian to what's available now.
I guess maybe I didn't ask it correctly. Before Ian, how many available coastal units were there compared to how many available units inland?
So just to answer it a little bit, first of all, the dark blue bar would be reflective of the total number of units in that 3-month period in 2022 versus 2023. So that 1 million, of course, is divided by the 90 days or 92 days, whatever is in the first quarter of the year. So that's how many were available by night during that time.
That's a combined inland and coastal, correct?
No, those are broken out.
And these are broken out inland v. coastal.
So you have an inland column and a coastal column. So 1 million room nights, round numbers, there were 300,000 room nights. I'm, you know, not great math, but, you know.
But beds is like, it's like, I mean, doors, it's like 12,000.
Right, we have about,
like
round numbers, 13,000 plus hotel units, but this isn't just hotel units.
Yeah, well, yeah, if you just get hotels, but then you take 32% of that, which is pretty much the islands. It's, so what is it? That's 5,000-6,000 as island count. That's down.
Well, if you go back, you have it on the previous slide, don't you? Maybe I'm wrong.
While we're on this, I'll just start. Mr. Steinke's got a question. And then
Thank you. I think maybe the I think maybe the answer lies in the third quarter of 22. How many room nights were there in a full quarter not affected by the storm to then be compared with the number of room nights that were available in the quarter affected by the storm?
It is a little bit tricky, and I know you're going to see right there on that available room nights in 22 almost 1.3, and then you know, inland 1.1, and you see it drop a little bit. A lot of times there are individually owned units where the owner takes occupancy of that unit in the winter months, right? I want to come, I own this place so I can stay here during the winter, but then I rent it out the rest of the year. So there is some variance from quarter to quarter, but you're correct. I mean, the number we are using when we tell you 69.1% of the units have reopened, hotel units, that is based on the number of units prior to Hurricane Ian. And that is 9,881 units have opened. So.
Before Ms. Smith, you.
The one question I have in getting to that visual map of the 93.3 to the 43.3, when I look at, and just specifically, I'm a hotel operator, and I'm in Cape Coral, we've never been considered marketed as a coastal. We are an inland property. So I'm looking at this map and it's indicating that we're considered coastal in your map. And so I think there's some discussion that has to be had in regards to what coastal actually means versus what inland actually means.
And again, this is STAR's breakdown of the area. That's what you're seeing there.
Okay, yes.
We are, Joseph is giving you a breakdown based on the way Star is breaking down the units.
Interesting, because we don't compare to, even on Star, we don't, I don't want to go too deep.
Yeah, no, I understand. You have your competitive set, correct.
Set, we compare to other inland properties.
Correct.
But I'd never pull to Sanibel or
Right.
Fort Myers Beach or something. Okay, thank you.
Just so, just clarifying, this aligns with the way Star is breaking it out.
Ms. Vaughn.
Do you guys have a list of, or start to know how many units will not be coming back online ever?
That's a
And then say what will then be the new true normal?
I do not have that crystal ball. In all honesty, we are having constant conversations with the properties that are not online. The ones we can communicate with, as you can imagine, some we are unable to communicate with. Lot left unanswered. People are still getting their plans. That there are transactions that are happening, closings that haven't happened yet. We are just keeping as good a track of available data as we possibly can. But in fairness, we knew. I think I told everyone from the beginning we're going to get to about 70%, and then we're going to hold there for a while. And we're at 69%. And we've been there for a while, and I think that's where we're going to be. So. It is going, most of what we're talking about is major renovation or rebuild going forward. And the real challenge, and maybe the people around the table who have properties can talk more about this, is supply chain issues around electrical equipment. There's a huge delay. Bill, you want to comment about that?
If you didn't get in early on electrical switches or elevator parts, they're right now 50 to 55 weeks out. So, you're just a year to get electrical switches now. It was pre-storm like 6 months, and now it's jumped to a year now. So, it's going to be a continued challenge.
And I think that's going to, those things are going to. It's not even, we're ready to go, we have the money to go. Those issues are still being resolved, but even when you're ready to go, you're hampered by some of these parts and equipment that you need to make your property work.
What makes this even more complicated is that's just the hotels. Now, take the, was it 49% was of our bed tax was vacation rental? Well,
condos.
Yeah, well, no idea what that number is.
And individual properties. Bill, you've had contractors on your site. I've had 3 contractors come and give me a bid, and not one bit of work done at my house yet. It's this. When you're talking about vacation rentals, they're individual units getting repaired. The timeline is the same challenge every person in this room who has damage is having.
I will say with contractors, the thing that's changed, when we came out of September, October, November, you had the contractor, literally electricians. If I wanted to come give you a bid, I'm charging you to come and give a bid because they had so much work. Now it's kind of switched now because the housing market's gone down. So now you can get bids and get the labor. It's just the parts are the issue now.
Unfortunately, we're caught in about 3 different challenges, right? You got supply chain issues, you got labor issues, and you've got just too many people needing the same thing at the exact same moment. So.
Anybody else? One thing I can infer, from this, the first time seeing this, is that my perception of coastal is probably not been accurate based on the percentages we've been seeing, and I assume that the parts I really think are coastal are far worse than maybe even being reported, because I'm going to just assume that some of that area of what I thought was more inland, which is now coastal, is helping the extreme coastal properties or areas appear to be doing better than they're doing, right? that's...
Well, let's be fair, there are very few units open on Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, very, very few. And
Units available right now?
correct. Open. Businesses that are open.
Between Sanibel and Captiva, we might have 200 units compared to, 4,500 or something. But
Correct.
In answer to your question, Darla, I don't know of any property that's not going to redevelop on Sanibel at this point.
It'll happen, it's just when.
Jay, did you have a comment before we move on?
As I was looking at the quarterly comparisons back one slide, I guess back 2 slides, and we're looking at the comparatives. How many, in the past we've said we had, how many hotel rooms?
About 13,000.
About 13,000. About how many vacation rentals? There was around 18.
No good answer there.
There's no good answer.
More than hotel rooms, though.
Well, that's what I thought, and looking at these numbers.
But when you look at bed tax, it's 49% was vacation rental and roughly 51% was hotel.
Looking at these numbers, assuming the 13,000, we're doing the math, it's about 25,000 room nights per night, so we're short a big chunk of rooms, it seems like.
Vacation rentals.
Well, even in the 21, 22 number.
Yeah.
It seems like that we're not at the number that we've always assumed it was at.
Again, all estimates based on available information. Yeah.
Just point of clarification. If you know a vacation rental, somebody owns a home, they are listed on Airbnb, VRBO, however it may be, they're listing themselves. How do you determine that they're no longer renting? Did the county do a reach out, or did they no? Because it'd be
We'd have this whole room as a team of people doing something like that. No. Yeah, no. Truthfully, and this is one of my points, this is why we're using Key Data Dashboard. They do data scraping.
Right.
To identify vacation rentals. Joseph also has a number of vacation rental companies that provide data to him, and then he's able to use that combination of key data, inference, all those things he just talked about.
Also looking at the number of licensed vacation rentals through the Department of Business and Professional Regulations, it's kind of, we're trying to put all those pieces together. Is it a perfect picture? No, but it's as close as we can get given the information that we have.
And the other thing about vacation rentals that is the biggest challenge is it could be a vacation rental for 3 months of the year and not use the whole rest of the year as a vacation rental.
Right.
Or it could be a vacation rental 9 months of the year. It could be a vacation rental once every other month. It's such a varying degree of the way vacation rentals are done. And in all honesty, Airbnb and VRBO, these distribution channels, change the way that works. Everybody's not with a real estate company doing their vacation rental.
Mr. Stein.
City of Cape Coral is engaging a technology and AI that seeks out anywhere where these vacation rentals are advertised. And the technology goes as deep as to determine when available rooms are. And our effort is to identify, number one, where the rental is. Are they registered with the city? Are they registered with the DBPR? And are they collecting the bed tax? And we're estimating that we will have close to 9,000 in the city alone. So
I think our previous number was 7,000, but again, different day, different answer.
Thank you.
And I will tell you, we've engaged for over 3 years. We did a registration, so we've been having those services, and I think the goal for everybody is compliance. So it's going to help everyone do their job better and make sure those bed taxes are being collected. The ones that are putting those heads in bed should be having to pay those applicable taxes. So I think that's great that the Cape is going to start to do that as well.
Great discussion. I appreciate it.
And along those lines, especially with vacation rentals, that thing is a constant. It's not the Wild West anymore, but it's still trying to figure these things out. It's constantly moving. I mean, as things come up, feel free to reach out to us, or we'll answer whatever questions we can with the data we got. I can't promise you the answer you might like, or I can't promise you, but we will always do our best. So along those lines. So that was our discussion on inland versus coastal. I'm going to run through just some of the visitor tracking stuff, just to get a sense of the visitor, just because it's a little bit different right now. One of the things with trip planning is a year ago, only about 2 in 5 of your visitors considered another destination before ultimately picking you. This year it was 3 out of 5. That's the highest number that we've seen. It basically means your messaging, your marketing, things of that nature. You have to fight harder to get your current visitors given what you had. And this was people who came. there's going to be a percentage of people who considered here and decided elsewhere for a variety of reasons. Getting to one of the things I mentioned earlier, why did you come? Relaxing and wine is usually number one. It still was, but it's usually by a lot higher. But again, a lot different purposeful visits. People visiting their friends and relatives, mom and dad, what have you, and sporting events. Particularly, we point out for January through March spring training, just because that did. Even as you look at spring training, it was a larger portion of what your normal January through March is. Even if the numbers were flat because of how the number of visitors were down, the percentage who came for that was higher. About half of your visitors notice promotions before coming. And about a quarter were influenced largely on the internet and social media, and then further way down. But again, I kind of connect this to. It's more important right now for the marketing, given that your visitors themselves were considering other areas, so this will always be a vital part. About 60% flew. That I believe that was down a little bit, but most of your visitors, if they do come, they're coming through RSW. Your travel party, where they're coming from, you still Midwest is still your key. Southeast and Northeast is still important. Post-hurricane, international hasn't gotten back to pre-pandemic levels. We were starting to come back, and then it kind of faded a little bit with the hurricane. From a sentiment there, it's tough to make that trip over from Germany and things if you're not exactly sure what the state of being is going to be when you get here. About 30% are traveling with children. Most of your visitors are traveling as families or couples, but we have noticed post-hurricane, more people are traveling by themselves. That's a lot of your hurricane recovery folks and things of that nature. That's a party of one. So that we saw more. Your length of stay is a little bit over 8.3 nights. That was up a little bit. Still about a quarter were first-time visitors, and 22% have been here more than 10 times. And we've always looked at the post-trip evaluation to be important, especially as the destination has changed post-hurricane. Nearly 9 in 10 would recommend the area. 86% are likely to return, and actually 4 out of 5 are likely to return next year. Now, compared to previous years, previous quarters, these numbers aren't as high, but they're still high. You're comparing, we didn't get a 96% like we usually did, but the destination's different. We're still recovering, that kind of thing. So from a objective perspective, as someone who looks at these numbers in a lot of different places, I would have guessed lower numbers during your higher times and that kind of thing. But so they still like what they're doing when they're here. It's just not as high as it used to be. Satisfaction, 90% were satisfied or very satisfied with their visit. Almost 90% satisfied with customer service. And that's one of the things that it's really interesting things to see. When we see customer service in other areas, I can think of, I don't want to name destinations, but we have seen percentages up to 40% not happy with customer service due to lack of people, or it's too busy, and that kind of thing. So those numbers where we're at are solid. And in terms of your paid accommodations, 9 out of 10 are at least meeting their expectations, 31% exceeding. Again, given everything that this destination has went through, if you compare to yourself a year ago, these numbers are down. But I think there's a viable explanation why that may be. Yes, go ahead.
How large a sampling is that typically?
We do 900 a quarter. This time we hit almost 900 exactly. Sometimes we'll get up to 1,000, but this is out of 900 visitors.
Thank you.
Just one question on the satisfaction. Do you ever ask the question, since you visited here, have you moved here? Because some might drop off, and we know that we get a lot of people that once they visit, and I realize it's not
right.
VCD, but it's a good question.
No, it's a good question. The tricky thing about that, we've have questions of like, are you considering relocating, things like. Now, I can't remember if it's in this questionnaire or not. The tricky thing for folks who have moved here, our first question is, do you live here? If the answer is yes, the survey's over, because this is a visitor survey. But to your point, it's a good question, and frankly, at some point we have in the works a resident survey, and that will be part of that. Like, it was one of the reasons you live here because you visited here first. So it's a good question. It's just this isn't the survey for it.
Thank you.
And then finally, concerns. Traffic is still a concern. Some things change, some things stay the same. January through March, traffic is still the number one concern. 4 out of 5 of your visitors are concerned with traffic. I was having a conversation earlier. The one thing with traffic is that's a daily thing. It happens to you daily, therefore it's always top of mind. It's like It's similar to, I mean, we did one in Tallahassee and traffic was the #1 concern. And you're like, it's Tallahassee, respectfully. You know, you compare yourself to Atlanta. Orlando, traffic isn't that bad. But if you deal with it every day, it's just a top of mind thing. It's not, because this question isn't about severity. It's about and high prices were a concern as well. Anything that was hurricane related was below those. So that's traffic and high prices are a larger concern for your visitor than anything post-hurricane. Don't get me wrong, post-hurricane stuff may have caused them to not come, but of the folks who are here, these are your biggest concerns. And 3 out of 10 year visitors just had no concerns at all. They still enjoyed their trip.
This may be a little deeper in the weeds than we need to go, but I'd be curious to see what these numbers, how they relate between that inland and coastal category that you had, just to time for, you know, just to keep visual on how we're doing as coastal communities, to be able to know what we have to do to improve or things like that. If it's possible, that would be great.
That is a little bit tricky. That is a little bit tricky in that you could be staying inland but visiting coastal. So, or vice versa, right? You know, so I don't know. You know, sometimes when you slice and dice too many times, your data isn't as sound as others. But maybe if we looked at it over a long period of time, you know, like a whole year, you know, having a larger pool of participants, it might be of value. So let us consider that for sure.
It's something that we can do, but to Tamara's point, we would have to define on basically like, hey, where did you stay, which isn't perfect. There's going to be some variance in that isn't going to be the data won't be as clean as I'd like it. At the same time, it could give you some insights, I mean, from that perspective with a large enough data set.
Thank you.
Finally, just the barometer. I mean, comparatively, you have about 3 out of your 5 accommodation folks who we talk to look like their numbers are down for April through June, and about that same number through July through September. Again, this isn't a severity question. It is up, flat, or down. So it isn't like, is it going to be down 40? But you know, looking forward, you know, I guess from our perspective, not surprisingly, hotelier sales is going to be down compared to last year, year over year. From that perspective. And again, I'm not saying the hoteliers and the vacation rental folks are right. This is just the sentiment that we're hearing from them right now to give you it's kind of part of the crystal ball.
And this is, you didn't break this out by inland or coastal?
No, this one, this sample isn't large enough to do that breakdown, because then you'd really start getting to some fairly granular thing. I mean, it could be a number. I just prefer not to give you. I want to give you a number that I can stand behind, and those numbers get pretty small. Just given that.
Mr. Fuller, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and I'm not sure who to direct this to. Thank you. The last decade, the number that keeps jumping out to me is that less than 3% of our visitors are international, excluding Canada. What's the best we've ever had in the last 10 years, percentage-wise?
27%.
We're international. So that's how far.
Well, not for Q1. And in fairness, Q1 is probably the lowest. You know, and remember, today we're looking at just Q1, but on an annualized basis, high 20s, but that was in the last 2 decades. But it has, particularly in the last 12 years or so, been on a decline as a percentage of the total, but not.
It's an understatement.
Yeah, correct. And of course, since the pandemic, I mean, you know, but everything international is related to flights and opportunity and the economy and other things. And, you know, we've just been challenged with those things.
But also the biggest possibility for a rebound.
Correct. And to be clear, a very important point of emphasis for us as a team. So.
And to that point, that was the one thing with international. Like once when we looked at international sentiment there about coming to the United States, it was like as soon as most people were ready post-pandemic, inflation changed the entire planet. And so like the strong dollar is great for some things. It's not for bringing international visitors here and things of that nature. So it's like, you know, wouldn't it be nice to just have 1 year where there wasn't something really kind of pushing against? But that's, you know, as soon as sentiment changed, inflation changed the game. So that kind of thing. If it ain't one thing, it's another.
And the rebound of international flights has been a real challenge, and that's not just for our community, that's across the country. So as, you know, maybe Ben could, you know, if you have more questions around that, we could have a deeper conversation maybe at a future meeting. But, you know, I assure you, we are not backing off the international market. We know the value of it. We will be at IPW starting next weekend for 5 days. We have a lot of special things planned. We're doing a press conference to show our recovery to this point. You know, staff is fully engaged in the international market. We have contractors in the UK, Germany, and Canada pushing hard.
You know that wasn't a criticism.
No. I mean, to me, it's one of the most disappointing things that I've had to deal with, because I know that our international visitors, even when they were, let's just say when they were 20% of our visitation, they were closer to 40% of the spend in the community. They stay longer, they spend more. Yes.
And they also come when we need them. More
Yeah.
of that.
Exactly. Especially the Germans and the UK come when we need them. The Canadians tend to, of course, come in the winter when it's cold in Canada, just like all our winter visitors come. You know, the ones that are in cold places come in the winter months, which is why you saw what made the chart was Canada. But, you know, we are keenly focused on rebuilding those numbers, but we are faced with some challenges that are very difficult to overcome.
Brings me to the end of the presentation. We had some great discussion here, but I also want to ask if there's any other questions. But I always love this board. We just kind of tend to ask it when it's there, which is great. It's easier to do it. But any other questions on January through March? Again, this isn't the full report, but I wanted to cover kind of the main things, and then we kind of, like I said, had some great discussion. So I love it.
Before you go, Joseph, I wanted to, can we go back to the star real quick?
Yeah, I'm going to ask, Nick, can you pull up STAR, please?
No, this one. One with.
Oh, you want all the details?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Nick, sorry, the one that's in their packet.
Sorry, Nick.
No, it's okay. It's a little hard to see up there, which is why we don't display it, but yes.
It's just an interesting trend that I see. I just wanted to.
Yeah, not just us, right?
Not us even.
Yeah.
I know. There we go.
It is tiny though, so apologies. We'll try to make it a little bigger.
So, looking at trends, what I find interesting is look at the Caribbean. You know, their March was gangbusters, 25.9. But then look at, you know, the comparison, 38. I mean, so, you know, you look at that and you say, well, Bill, why are you looking at the Caribbean? The Caribbean is a big competitor to Florida.
Correct.
And what's happening is you got more travelers going to the Caribbean, and you look at the Keys. The Keys never go in the negative. They're in the negative. So it's a trend that's happening that, you know, you got COVID, people didn't want to travel internationally, they want to stay in the United States. Florida was a big plus for that. So now you see that restriction's gone. They're moving now to the Caribbean, which is going to mean Florida is going to have to compete from a marketing standpoint. So, you know, I always say that. I always like to quote Henry Ford, the man who stops advertising to save money is like the man who stops the clock to save time. So, you know, when we start looking at marketing, it's the reason why you got to keep marketing. Otherwise, you know, the Caribbean is going to be gobbling up our demand.
And I will remind you that last winter we benefited while they suffered, and now they're benefiting while we suffer. But recognize, I mean, Florida, you know, and again, you know, I know we were down the most, we had the biggest impact from the hurricane, but when you look at the other counties, you do, I mean, how often do you see negative occupancy in March? That's an unusual situation. And if it's down, it's, you know, 1/10 of a point or 3/10 of a point. And you see no one had huge successes in March because we are now back to the point where we're competing with the world. And Joseph, I think you shared with me, and by the way, when you get to your four councils information, there's an article about the growth in the Caribbean, because we had talked about it a little bit last month, and when I saw the article, I made sure it got put in your packet. But the request for passports is soaring.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I sent it. I read the article, so I sent it to my team because I was like, if you need to renew, the previous year was an all-time record, and it was up 44%. And so sentiment, and then I think it was on Expedia, the searches for international trips of U.S. residents was up like 77%. So like, to this conversation, people may have been willing to travel to Florida or other places last year. Well, now sentiment, they're willing, and they're showing with behavior, they're willing to go elsewhere. And so you're competing with that. We talked about pent-up demand shortly after COVID, but now there's like pent-up international demand, and we're seeing it. It's one thing that I love survey data, but also that's behavior data. People are requesting passports. They are on Expedia searching for it. So that's beyond sentiment, it's behavior.
Yep. And cruises are through the roof too. And I mean, your competition is on, right? It's not just domestic. It's not just the people in that competitive list. It's the world, and it's also the cruise industry. So
I think these are great points. I mean, my kids say I'm old because I get on Facebook, but for those of you that are on Facebook still, it doesn't take a genius to figure out these macro trends, right? All your friends decided to go back to Europe because, hey, we finally can break free of the COVID restrictions. Caribbean's opened up, cruises are opened up.
And the U.S. dollar is strong.
Right. For many of us around the table that have mature properties, we might have thought to ourselves, I know I did, that we were coming off a year that we might never actually improve upon. I mean, how were you going to do any more occupancy than you did when everybody was piling into Florida? And so I don't want to make excuses about the numbers that we're seeing here post Ian, but we're comparing them to a year that was almost fictitiously high to some extent. And we need to face that. That's going to be a challenge. You could almost go back, I think, to be more accurate and look at the prior year and do a comparison, because that's a lot more of what you would call a typical year. But just, food for thought. I think it'll make us feel better when we can start recovering from Ian and seeing these percentages go up over the next couple of years. But it'll probably be a struggle to get to that 1 year.
Well, just for context, and I think the bed tax is a good way, that's bottom line numbers, yeah. Right? We were up 25% over 19 in 21, and we were up 25% over 21 in 22.
Yeah.
That's 50% over 19, more than 50%. That's inordinate growth. And I think I said many times, is this sustainable? I think yeah, it was. And good. I hope we all save some money.
And also,
but
the visitor experience of we knew that when people were looking to come, we were getting feedback of what they were seeing, whether a property was tired for the price. So this is also an opportunity we have before us to make sure, unfortunately or not, Ian has made sure that they're not going to be tired when they come back.
Correct. And the other thing about that period, and this is where I've always taken the comfort, when we get them here, we get them back. And so the fact that we had those 2 excellent years tells me that we have new loyalists that we built, that we were able to bake in. And over time, we're going through a challenge. We all know that. But this too shall pass. And not only will the product be good, but their experience that they had here will be a deep memory for them, and they will be back. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Okay, moving on to new business. Approval of the second quarter FY23 budget report. April Bonnets.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to provide you with an overview, a little snapshot of our second quarter budget to actuals. We have 3 of the business units that we operate in, and the first one is the VCB operating budget, at 26% right now of budget. which everyone's been monitoring their budget carefully. The next slide, we have the Beach and Shoreline Operating Business Unit, and we are pacing at 37% of the budget. In the next slide, we have our Sports Development Business Unit, and Jeff is pacing at 43% of his budget. And there was really nothing major to comment on, but I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? I guess I have one. Was this adjusted post Ian? I mean, maybe this would be obvious, or this was just based on prior to Ian where you're at? No adjustments?
The budget has not been adjusted. We have maintained our budget as it was. Obviously, in some cases, we've modified expenditures, which is reflective in the budget, the percent of budget expended, but we did not make a budget adjustment down. Just accept the reports as they are.
Second. Bobby? Smith? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right,
Motion
thank you,
passed.
everyone.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question as it relates to the Beach and Shoreline and the under operating expenses promotions. Could you give an example of what a promotion would be and why we would be at 2% of budget after 4 months?
I'm going to have to ask Nancy to give us those are very small projects, right? A sponsorship of a conference or something like that. We don't typically spend promotions budgets out of that particular line.
Right, typically it would be either the sponsorship of the National American Shore and Beach Preservation Association Conference or the Florida State Shore and Beach. And typically we do that to lure those meetings into this destination. So we'll go with them wherever they are this year and then but we haven't done that and we don't plan on doing that this year.
I mean, the big promotions budget is obviously in the main marketing budget. I mean, in the main operating budget.
And don't you put some of those line adjustments in just, to factor if you're going to use them, but you might not be using them, but you want to make sure they're budgeted for.
Correct. A little bit of money there in case we have that opportunity, yes.
Okay, moving on. Formalized beach and shoreline for FY24 projects. Nancy McPhee.
Good morning, Council. I'm here today to ask your approval of beach and shoreline funding recommendations for fiscal year 24. I want to thank those TDC members that joined us at our annual workshop on April 26th. At that workshop, you recommended that 17 projects be recommended to receive funding for next fiscal year. However, since that workshop, we've received approval from county administration to carry over funds for 2 of the projects. These are projects that don't plan on expending any funds current year. They are Project J, Lee County Parks and Rec, Emergency Beach Cleanup, $200,000, and Project T, Lee County Transit, Fort Myers Beach Tram, $253,365. By carrying over current year funds, that allows the amount that we need from reserves to be reduced by half. So instead of $860,000, we'll only need to ask the BOCC to consider $407,000. So that is one change from those of you that joined us on April 26th I wanted to make you aware of. Again, today what we're asking of you is to make legislative findings for 11 projects. And then once we do that, we'll ask you to approve the recommendations for those 17 projects totaling $11,130,968. And again, that amount was reduced by $453,000, and we'll need to request the BOCC pull from reserves for a total of $407,000. So unless there's questions, the first thing we need to do is do legislative findings, and I will need a motion on each one separately. Are we ready?
Yes, Ms. Smith.
Just real quickly, for those of you that have not been through this process before, we all met, went through everything, discussed everything, and as our subcommittee supported what's being brought forward. We're also going to request, because of the funding needs, that we go to the BOCC and ask for the additional funding, especially due to the catastrophic events that we're all facing. We figured, this is a time that we need it. We have considerable amount in reserves, and we felt like this was a fair ask to go to the BOCC to ask for that additional funding. So just kind of wanted to give a synopsis.
Any other comments, questions before we vote on the?
Okay, I'm going to start with the first request from the City of Sanibel for beach erosion monitoring. To fund this project with tourist development tax funding, the TDC must make a legislative finding that this project will improve, maintain, or restore the beach and shoreline.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Next project, Captiva Erosion Prevention District's Beach Park.
You're going to vote on
We're going to vote on each one.
Oh, I thought I heard they. Did they?
So we've got Mr. Johnson, Ms. Bonk, motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the next.
Okay, Captiva Erosion Prevention District's Beach Park Maintenance request. To fund the request for signage, the TDC must make a legislative finding that this part of the project relates to and primarily promotes tourism.
Do we have a
To
motion?
approve?
I'll second. Ms. Smith, Mr. Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on.
The Town of Fort Myers Beach's Beach and Shoreline Maintenance Project. In order to fund 3 Kubotas, 2 electric carts, native landscaping, shade structures, and interpretive signs, as well as a barber surf rake, the TDC must make a factual determination founded upon appropriate legislative findings and due consideration of the peculiar and prevailing local conditions and needs that this project promotes tourism.
Do we have a motion?
I do. Go ahead.
Second.
Watchulis, Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next project is the City of Sanibel's Beach Park Operations and Maintenance request to fund the shade structures, kiosk roof, signage, and vehicles. TDC must make a legislative finding that these parts of the project promote tourism.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
That's Johnson and Palmer. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next request is from the Barrier Island Park Society for Gasparilla Island Walking Trail Maintenance. To fund vehicle maintenance and signage, TDC must make a legislative finding that this part of the project promotes tourism.
Have a motion?
Second.
We got it. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next request from the Barrier Island Park Society for Cayo Costa Island Maintenance. If TDC makes a legislative finding that the boat is found to primarily to serve the purpose of beach improvement, maintenance, renourishment, restoration, and erosion control, and the park is open to the public, tourist development tax revenues may be used for the purchase.
We have a motion.
Second for discussion.
Okay. So we have Mr. Watchulis, Ms. Smith, and open for discussion. Anybody have a comment?
Comment on this. I know with this discussion, this was funding for a boat. And I didn't know if there was going to be additional language and what our discussion was, because this is much different than what we have done in the past by giving money for a boat. Were we going to ask for additional language in that to make sure that the language would be that only for islands that are only accessible by boat to approve this? I thought there was some discussion on that item.
And that's setting a precedent.
And yeah, this is setting a precedent. So I think the language.
In the motion or the interlocal agreement?
I'm sorry?
In the motion?
Well, I think the language that we need to push forward to the BOCC would say specifically under this, if we find that legislative finding, add to that that it would be only for accessible only by boat.
You would have an amended motion stating the island's only accessible by boat.
I think that was our discussion at the meeting.
That's how I remembered it.
Yeah.
Would the motion maker want to amend their motion?
You will have to change the language.
To the motion? Okay.
Ms. Frazier
No,
keeps
she
us
can-
out of trouble as our
She can
resident
change the
lawyer.
language at any time, because we're going to include what Councilwoman Smith has recommended. So you can reread the language and include in that part of the legislative finding is that this only applies to islands accessible by boat.
only accessible by boat.
Yeah.
Okay. If the TDC makes a legislative finding that the boat is found to primarily to serve the purpose of beach improvement, maintenance, renourishment, restoration, and erosion control on a barrier island accessible only by boats, and the park is open to the public, tourist development tax revenues may be used for the purchase.
Now, do we need a motion for the amendment?
You can amend your motion.
I'll amend my motion to just this, with that restriction.
And I will second that with the amended motion
Second.
language.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Hopefully we've recorded this meeting. Okay. The next request is Lee County Facilities Construction Management's beachfront park maintenance request to fund boardwalks. TDC must make a determination that the construction of the boardwalk is to secure the physical integrity of the beach and is a valid method of erosion control.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next request from the town of Fort Myers Beach for public beach access boardwalk replacements. To fund this project, TDC must make a determination that the construction of the boardwalk is to secure the physical integrity of the beach and is a valid method of erosion control.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? Motion carries.
The next request from the town of Fort Myers Beach is for the Newton Beach Park shade structure replacement. Upon appropriate legislative finding and due consideration of the peculiar and prevailing local conditions and needs, the TDC may fund this project.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
For the Ding Darling Wildlife Society's Perry Tract Interpretive Kiosk, in order to fund this project with tourist development tax revenue, TDC must make a legislative finding that this project shows a distinct and direct relationship between the expenditure of tourist tax revenues and the promotion of tourism.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And finally, Lee County Transit's Fort Myers Beach Tram Service. To fund this project, TDC must make a legislative finding that there is a clear and direct relationship between the promotion of tourism and the particular transportation service being offered.
I'll move.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Now, finally, I'm going to ask for you to approve funding 17 projects at a total of $11,130,968 for next fiscal year.
So moved.
Ms. Smith, Mr. Wachulis, all in favor?
I have discussion.
I should say discussion.
I have a question on the total amount. What was the amount last year compared to this year? And are some of the smaller attractions going to have less opportunity for?
So last year's number, do we have last year's
It was
number?
15. It was 15.7.
15 round numbers. She remembers it that well.
I moved ahead too fast. My finger went.
Okay.
I'm on the next question. I'm on the next one.
Oh, you're on the next.
Re-ask
I
it.
got you. Any other discussion on beach and shoreline? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to Nancy. For those of you that have sat on this thing for a lot of years, she puts a ton of this information together. The book is huge, and it's a lot better on years where you to fund all of the requests than it is on these tougher years where you have these kind of situations and really have to make hard decisions on really, really good projects that you're unfortunately not able to fund. So thank you for all those that did that with us. Nancy's going to stay up with us, and we're going to move on to Jay's favorite topic of the day, approval of guidelines for attractions marketing program.
I was ready. And my swiping finger will swipe too fast. I got to the wrong one.
So I first want to thank the TDC's marketing subcommittee They are going to shortly be reviewing requests for events marketing funds, but today we're asking, and they were sent some information to review before this meeting. It's in your packet. Today we're going to ask for your consideration of a guideline change. The attractions marketing program has been around for quite a while. We were lucky to be able to increase the budget to $600,000 last year. However, we only allocated $530 of it. And some of those attractions, many of the attractions this year didn't do much first quarter and probably won't expend all of those funds. We know that next year will be a big need year for our attraction partners to get, as we recover, to get their marketing out to potential visitors. So currently, in current year, again, there was, I think, 530. There's a chart in your packet of the current year requests. There was 32 attractions that requested. And again, our goal for next year is to allocate all of the $600,000 to all of the attractions that need it. There's new attractions like Big Arts that haven't requested in years and years that are interested in applying for next year. Currently, the maximum an attraction can request and be funded is $20,000. And so after some discussion at last year's attractions marketing workshop and this year, the VCB is considering or would like to ask the TDC's consideration of increasing that maximum. So our proposal to you today is that eligible organizations with an annual attendance of less than 100,000 visitors, which is most of our attractions, be allowed to request up to a maximum of $25,000. They'll still need to have eligible tactics in their marketing plan. Doesn't mean they'll automatically get the full amount, but it gives a little bit of leeway for those that really will need it next fiscal year. Attractions like Bailey Matthews, in those areas that have been affected. The second part of the proposal is to allow eligible organizations with annual attendance averaging over 100,000 visitors request up to a maximum of $50,000. So that is our proposal. If there's any questions.
Ms. Cronin.
Just a comment. Just thank you. I think that really reflects what we talked about last year, how we were trying to make it work. And I think that's a perfect solution to make that change.
Yeah, I never want to make light of $500,000 or $600,000, but in the big picture and the amount of work that goes into these projects and I think the effect they have on our local tourism, I don't think this ask is out of line at all. In fact, I think it's still probably a pretty conservative ask. This is my thoughts. Ms. Bonk.
And if I read this correctly on this document that has kind of what the recommendations are for this fiscal year, where we're going from 20 to 25,000, Edison Home is really the only one that would be funded above that at 30, even though the request is 50, right?
In the memo that I sent to the subcommittee on Monday, there are actually 5 or 6 attractions. I believe there's the Ding Darling, the IMAG has over 100,000 visitors. The Center for Arts in Bonita Springs has over 100,000 visitors.
But their request, I'm saying in the dollar amount, where the max is currently 20.
That's last year.
Last year.
That's the last request. The new ones haven't been made.
Carry on.
So you go and I'll go after you.
The question and concern I have, first of all, I think that there's attractions out there that are more than just the rainy day place. I think they actually bring people in. We need to recognize that. The concern is that, as I do my math, and maybe I did it wrong, is that 50,000, and I think it was 5 on the list that were eligible, is 250,000, and then that would leave 27 that are eligible at now 25,000, which is 675,000. So the total eligibility is 925,000, but we're only funding 600 of it. So there's a gap of 325,000.
And I'll defer to Nancy, but I think there are some requesting agencies on that list that you will not be getting requests from this year.
That's my concern.
And that's our concern. Some folks, just like some properties are offline, some attractions are offline. And, we want to make sure that we are giving the opportunity to draw as many people into the attractions that are open. You're still going to have to go through this process. I don't know that everybody will automatically ask for $50,000. They have to do the hard work on the backside of this, putting that marketing plan together. And But we wanted to give the opportunity for the ones that are truly drawing people into the community to have a larger allocation, but also to give everyone the opportunity who is open to have a larger allocation. I mean, you know, in your business, inflation, the challenges, prices are up. If we keep it the same, we're eroding what they're doing. And
I'm just concerned that as that number 600 is the max and that 325,000 gap, that we're going to take it away from the smaller attractions that really need it. And that's the concern and that I have on the number.
I think you balance that out when you review those requests, right? You're going to, that's the task of being on that subcommittee and reviewing those requests and making sure that every dollar you're giving them is going to be a dollar that works for the community.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and I think the reason we had this conversation is because one entity was always getting 50,000. Even though the max is 20,000, that was an advantage that was given over there. So that was the discussion, and I think it was very clear discussion that we said, you know what, that's really not fair to everybody else. And whether there are 5 or 6, unless there was a specified pot of money separate out of that 600,000 that we say, okay, you know, what amount do we allocate just to that 50,000, and it's a separate, not out of the same pot. Maybe we can look at it that way, because I think the reason that we are promoting this is trying to get new blood, new opportunities for people that haven't had them. And, you know, some might be applying for 5,000, but they could be applying for 20,000 or 25,000. I think we'd have to do a better job educating them as to how we can help them succeed. So I'm very concerned. I think it's going to be a very difficult year next year and the following few years, and I want everyone to have an opportunity at the same amount of money to move forward. We can also look at some of these that have been very fortunate to have been open posting in, that others haven't been. So they've been really benefiting. The cost to get in is more expensive compared to others. So I just have concerns again as I think we're breaking it out for those specifics that we're benefiting for so many years previously.
Mr. Wetchels?
I was involved in all those conversations. Those conversations all happened pre and before the bed tax went away. So right now in the state we are in, I don't know that I'm for increasing any amounts right now.
Well,
I agree.
I think we're opening the door. It doesn't mean we have to open it wide open. It's just saying that if we feel that somebody is desire and needs the 50, we have the latitude to do it. Whereas in the past we were restricted by what? It doesn't mean we have to give out 50. It just means they can apply for that. And I think the other thing too is the head count. You know, what determines the head count? I mean, I've guessed at the hotel who will go to Ding Darling every day. Does that mean, you know, it's kind of like going back and forth through the window, you know, so we really have to look at the occupancies and determine that, and, you know, the availability, 365, you know, days a year. I think it's okay to have the policy. It doesn't mean we have to effectively give everybody what they asked for, and we've gone through that before. So I'm okay with doing this because I think it's the right thing to do. And in the future, it'll be set up there when we get more money. But Bill, I mean, you and I will go through this if we have a certain amount. And I think she said it best too, is that maybe there's not going to be so many applications. We don't know, but it gives us the flexibility. And I think that's what the committee needs, flexibility.
Can I respond?
Yeah, we may need to get a motion and then have discussion on it, but I think for questions for Nancy, specifically around the table, then I'd like to see if we can entertain a motion and then discuss it. Any more questions about the program? Do we have a motion?
Well, I would say to the program, to Nancy, then, you know, I still have my concerns in regards to, is this a year to do it, especially after the conversations that we had last year that specifically addressed this. And we said there are other funding opportunities that organizations can go straight to the county. And I think it was such a conversation that said everyone should be on a level playing field. If we have a funding amount, then that's what you're applying for. Whether it goes to 20 to 25, I could handle that. But there are other avenues that maybe those organizations could go directly to the BOCC for additional funding. So this is where my concern of this goes almost against what we were talking about last year, is to try to give people a level playing field.
Again, I think we're just looking to allocate all of it. We didn't this year, and we know next year will be a need year. You need to remember that this is by reimbursement. Because revenue is down in many of our attractions, I'm not sure they're going to ask for that, go for that, top cap. They have to be able to afford to place the advertising and wait to get reimbursed, so.
Mr. Steinke.
On two comments. One, I think having it available then certainly gives you the purview to make the decision if necessary, if that's what's in writing. But to Holly's previous point, it would seem like some of the attractions they're trying to get started, the ones that have the lesser ones, actually would have less budget and would need the money more than the attractions that have the over $100,000. So almost a sensitivity to building the attraction base in the area, assisting those that are just getting started, almost might make more sense than contributing dollars to those that are already well established and have a tremendous visitor base already. So just food for thought.
For me, it's the optics is just bad. So that's my issue. I don't disagree with what you're saying, Tony. It's just the optics right now is just not the time to increase the amounts, in my opinion.
Okay.
Would you be amenable to going up to 25,000 or just staying at 20? And would you like to make a motion on that?
Well, I'll make a motion to retain it at the 20,000.
I'll second that.
I don't think we need a motion to
Yeah,
do that, because
yeah,
those
this
are
would
the
just fail.
existing guidelines. The
This
question
would
is, do you want to consider altering the guidelines? And if the answer is no, then we don't need any motion.
Okay.
I'll move to alter the guidelines.
Well, you wouldn't alter it because you'd be just on the previous guideline.
No, I want to go to the 2550. I'm like, if we don't have to do anything to keep it as it is.
You're
I'd like to
making a
move.
motion to
Change the guidelines.
change the guideline
Yes, to make
to
it-
what is being proposed.
Yes.
Ms. Cronin has a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Loppe has a second. Do we have some further discussion?
Just a question.
Ms. Cronin.
I have, having been on this committee for 20 years or more, we've been through all of these things many, many times. And I actually, we did have the big discussion last year, and I don't think it was a consensus. I think were all over the board. We just went with the rules that were in place. So making the amendment, I think, is a really good thing. Some of the smaller organizations that we're concerned about don't have the staff, they don't have the availability for the funds to do the matching funds, and it doesn't matter how, you could tell them they could have $100,000 and they don't have the wherewithal to make that work. So they're, asking for $5,000, or they're asking, and even some of the larger organizations, for example, I'm having a brain dead, North Fort Myers Echo? Yeah. Comes in and asks for $5,000, and they have all the opportunity in the world to do something, So I think that we have always worked really, really diligently to look at all the numbers and make an even playing field. So if all of a sudden we have $920,000 in applications and we have $600,000, we have really tried to level that playing field and make sure that everybody gets an equal share according to what they asked for. So if they ask for $5,000 and everybody gets 10% less, then that's what happens. So I think that there's a lot of work in this, but I think that we need the flexibility and the availability to make it work where it makes sense.
Ms. Ball.
One of my questions. My other question to you is, with the concern about the optics of it for this fiscal year, what is the concern of the optics?
The fact that you're raising the potential maximum from 20 to a larger amount, in a year that bed tax is taking a dive, the following year,
Not changing the budget, though.
I get it, but
That's what my question is, because I understand the bed tax is down, but we didn't allocate all of it last year, if I understand correctly. And if I understand the qualifications for this, they have to be able to put funds up front in order to qualify for the reimbursement, correct? So we're not saying, here's this money, do with it what you will, and in a year where they would be needing it more. I'm just trying to understand what I'm missing, because I immediately thought this was going to be a no-brainer conversation, and it's clearly not. So I'm just trying to figure out, what am I not seeing with this?
I go back to the optics of, I guess I have a different view of the optics. Kind of to your was it Henry Ford? The idea after one of these natural disasters would be that some of these organizations would need more resources to try to market our area. So I personally would be behind the increase of things that involve advertising, promotion, even in a down year, because that's where somebody like myself, who's normally very conservative with a budget, would say, and we're not even dipping into reserves, but if I was ever going to, it would be in, I guess, times like this.
But I mean, you're not changing the fact that you're having the ability to give funds to everybody. You're just saying you're not going to give the funds all to potentially the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Well, as I see it, we're raising the maximum eligibility of the program and of the individual. Asks. Mr. Lott.
When they deep dive into these things, and I'm not going to pick out any one thing or another, but there are what I would call destination attractions that really people come to Fort Myers, they got on their list that they're going to go see the Hudson Point, for sure. Whether they go to the museum, I mean, I don't know if they I don't know if that was on their bucket list. And that's when the committee has to do the deep dive and say, okay, here's the much money we have. We know that some may need it more than others, but that's what the committee's for. And then the committee comes back with their recommendation. All the committee is saying, what Nancy's saying, what I hear, is that we want to not be restricted as tight as we have been in the past. If we see a need, we want to go out there for it. Doesn't mean we're going to spend it all. But, I think through the years that I've served on the committee with Pam, there's nobody tougher than her to give out the money. So I think you have to look at the destination attractions differently than we do the other ones. And like you said, some people may not have the matching funds to even make the application. So that's enough said for me.
Thank you for the point. Any further discussion before we call the vote?
And I just say, when I look at that, I also know that what we're trying to do is expand. We know the main ones that are always going to get that business, and we need to help the ones that are learning to. 20 years ago, there were maybe only a handful. Now there are a specific number. If we have an amount, it should be one amount for every grant application. I think that's what we talked about, because there are.
I don't think everybody.
No, and I think, but we voted, it was, and it's fine. I mean, however the vote turns out, I'll always support the vote when it's over. But what was happening is, this 50,000 was put out for only one organization. They got it. We had a conversation, and we did say, we're going to funnel it down. I think we ordered them 40,000 last year, if I recall. So we tempered it down off of the 50,000. Just the expansion, a fair playing field for everyone, and everyone, this isn't the only grant opportunity everyone has. This is one of many. So that's just, that's where I fall, is one number for everyone, because this isn't the only game in town. Okay. And we shouldn't have companies, again, 5 years ago, we had not for-profits receiving these funds. So I've just been a consistent person to say, one grant, one amount, and let's keep it steady. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further different discussion than what we've already had? So let's call the vote. All in favor? You want to, let's do a hand raise or something, just because I think we'll have a mixed vote. So one, all in favor?
Oh, wait, you can't vote. Don't vote.
Only people that can vote.
Okay, we like your vote.
I'm sitting on my hands.
We have,
You have to vote.
so I'm. Oh, am I the deciding?
No, you have to vote. You have to vote.
I have to vote, so I'm for. And then opposed. 2. None of you people can vote?
No.
But they can contribute. I mean,
Did Jay vote?
What did we do wrong?
You were for it or against it?
Look pretty.
You
You
can't
abstain.
abstain.
All right. I vote for.
So it passes 5-2. Thank you for the discussion, everybody, on that. Thank you, Ms. McPhee. All right, moving on to for council's information. Let's start with Ms. Bonk.
None for me.
Jay.
None for me.
yeah, I've got a few things. We had our Islands Night, May 3rd. Thank you for everybody that attended. It was the best ever. It was at Twins, and I think Mark is Mark, are you
Still there. He's on the other side.
Yeah, Mark, thank you very much for helping out with that, making it happen. Our attendance was just under 5,000. It doubled more than we've ever had before. Rachel Pierce, if you all know Rachel Pierce, the artist, she designed the jerseys that everyone was wearing. They did have, we were able to put those back into an auction, and all of that goes back to the chamber. Our beaches are open with the exception of Lighthouse Beach, which is still a staging area. We are looking to say, you know what, we're going to be looking to the VCB. We need people to know that we are open for business. We need people to know to come, Sanibel and Captiva, come enjoy, come support our businesses. We're going to have, it's not going to be an easy summer this summer. Right now, we've got 74 businesses open between the two islands, based on a number pre-storm of 564. We have a long way to go, and we need everyone's help to get there. So please make sure that when you consider coming places, you come and support our islands. The Edison Awards, for those that came here, were in April 19th to the 21st. I encourage anyone that does not know what the Edison Awards are to go on edisonawards.org and look that up. It's bringing an innovation to Fort Myers. We had a great turnout for that. 23 countries were represented. Many of the things that you use on your daily life have been those innovators that have come and supported this Edison Awards. We have them in Fort Myers for the next 5 years. I always like to look local to Sanibel and also look at Lee County as well. So looking forward to the support we're going to be getting. Thank you all for everything you're doing and supporting all of our islands and our beaches as we continue our strong recovery. We're going to get there, and we'll do it together. So thank you.
So I'm going to do the ugly and the good. So the ugly, I think I brought it up, and I brought it up with our FRLA board, is Florida insurance right now. Again, hotels and condos are seeing 250% increases. There was an article just in the paper that potentially 6 more insurers are going to go under because of the reinsurance market. Insurance in Florida is a problem, and you need to let your legislation know that it is a problem because it's not going to get any better. At 250%, the only way hotels are going to survive is pass that cost on to the consumer, and you're going to see rates skyrocket. So that's the ugly. The good, we are putting water in the octopool at the Pink Show on Wednesday. So
That's a big deal.
yeah, swimming by Friday.
Pool party.
Brad.
Morning. Out of Bonita, we've had Celebrate Bonita last weekend, and to your point, just a real reminder that we are on the way back. We had right now over 4,000 people there to celebrate our 24th birthday. I want to thank Tammy and her staff for the great weather. It was absolutely a perfect weekend, so good job. We're excited about the fact that Center for the Arts has just hired a new executive director, Ileana, I'm going to really abuse this, Ushi. Highly experienced, came from the East Coast. She's joining us this week, so that's great news for the center. And finally, just as a reminder, Memorial Day, we'll have our annual Memorial Day services at Riverside Park in Bonita. And just for everyone, I hate when people say the Memorial Day holiday. It's not a holiday. It's Memorial Day for our veterans that have given the ultimate sacrifice. So if you can come down and join us. It's a great reminder of what Memorial Day really is.
Well, we have a lot going on, but for the sake of time, I'll just mention one today. This coming Saturday, we have a pre-K or pre-Mother's Day 5K going on the beach. There's almost 500 participants. The money being raised will go to a local 501c3, FMB Strong, that has had a donation center up and running since almost the day after the storm to provide stuff for residents in the 33931 zip code. So if you want to come out early in the morning and see my fast-moving skills down the beach, please come and join us and help support the businesses. Thank you.
So City of Cape Coral, Sharon did a great job of letting you know what's going on there with the lifeblood of Cape Coral is bubbling. There's a lot going on. We've got some new restaurants in town as well. One of the unique things that we're seeing now, and you saw that in Sharon's presentation, is that national firms, national companies, that it's just not a ma and pa opening a business. It's big companies recognizing that Cape Coral is a thriving and growing area, and they're opening there. And so one particular restaurant I'll put a plug in for, Sage on 47th. A neat little restaurant that'll be new to all of you. It just opened. They're closed on Mondays, but they're open for dinner Tuesday through Friday, lunch and dinner on Saturday, and lunch on Sunday. So come over to the Cape, try out a new restaurant. That's what we're becoming known for. So thank you.
Not a lot to report from Estero. We're pretty slow right now. We're entering the summer layoff time, but things are going to be gearing up soon, I think, in the fall. So it'll get busy up there at that point. So,
thank you. Bob?
I get to show my age. 40 years ago, I built and opened the Crow's Nest out on Tweemores, if you all recall. For those of you who've been there, some people have a lot of dirt on, but I won't share that today. However, this coming Monday, the Crow's Nest won't be opening, but it will be the shipyard, which is where the Crow's Nest was. And then probably towards the end of the month or middle of June, we'll be opening up the new Crow's Nest, which is now a second story overlooking the Gulf of Mexico. So the shipyard will be open Monday. It'll be open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week. So if you're out on Captiva and you want to get out of the heat, I would say you can go into the shipyard for lunch or dinner, whatever you like. The menu there will be similar to what the Crow's Nest was. And when the Crow's Nest opens up, probably mid-June or something like that, with pieces and parts, that'll be a different type. That'll be kind of a high-end steakhouse. So
it's a beautiful view.
Yeah, with a killer view.
With a beautiful view.
Thank you. I jumped out of order and skipped for council information, and I think you just said check your packets, correct?
There's lots of good articles and tidbits for you in your packet. Particularly, I included some to show you what your competition is doing. It's good to see what's going on in other destinations. My favorite was the building of a beach in Arizona, a resort community, beach community in Arizona. So take a look at that, because, back to we don't just compete with other sand and beach destinations. We compete with places that make sand and beach destinations. So it's man-made, but it's the competition.
Great. Just remind everybody the next Tourist Development Council meeting will be held on June 8th, right here at 9 a.m. Look forward to seeing you then. Otherwise, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful job. Nice
Thank
job,
you.
sir.